The man many call the greatest American architect of all time chose Spring Green to build what is likely his most significant project. Taliesin is not only the place where Frank Lloyd Wright sketched some of the country's most famous buildings, but it's also where he loved and lost. In a Fox 47 special report to make the effort to keep the building just as it was as Taliesin nears its 100th birthday.
This is a magical place, and it's magical because of its relationship to the land. It's magical in terms of the way the spaces interact with those views. And it's magical in terms of the story of the life we led here.
Taliesin is nestled in the Spring Green hillside, a landmark, a reminder that for much of his life, the man many call the greatest American architect of all time, Frank Lloyd Wright, made his home here.
I mean, of all of the Wright sites, this has a deeper resonance in terms of his life and his architecture than I think any place that exists.
Sid Robinson is an architect, an architectural historian who did his dissertation on Taliesin back in 1973. There's not much about the person or the place that he doesn't know.
The fireplace has always been there.
But appreciating Taliesin starts with understanding the person who built it. Frank Lloyd Wright was born in Richland Center in 1867 to immigrant parents. By age 22, he was married and designing homes in Chicago. From the start, to him, architecture was never about walls and windows.
For him, architecture was the way life can unfold.
Wright became famous for his prairie-style homes and his personal troubles. In 1911, he left his wife and 6 children and built Taliesin for his mistress, Emma Borthwick Cheney, the wife of a client. Taliesin is his signature style.
And I think it's that sense of sort of floating over the landscape that you don't feel that you're under something. You feel like you're just launched forth onto the landscape through the architecture.
And this place is filled with signs of tragedy and triumph. In 1914, a disgruntled servant set fire to Taliesin and killed those as they fled with an axe. The mistress, her 2 children, and 4 workers all died.
So this was Mrs. Wright's bedroom.
But signs of what happened are everywhere. Taliesin is built of limestone, which turns red when it burns. Wright rebuilt Taliesin and reused the red bricks and more.
So that's a perfect example that survived the fire and then get incorporated into the fabric of the building.
By 1925, Wright's 3rd wife-to-be, Ogilvana, was living at Taliesin, and that year the property burned a second time. Wright's studio survived.
So that out of this room came, some of the most important work that he did, starting in 1911, then all the way through.
This is where Wright sketched the Guggenheim Museum, Falling Waters, Johnson Wax and Racine, and what would become Monona Terrace. But his own former home now needs help.
Frank Lloyd Wright didn't believe in spending very much money on foundations because you couldn't see them.
Parts of Taliesin are sinking.
They are in the process of stabilizing from the basement on up.
Other parts are leaning.
It's a rolling crisis.
Robinson now works with Taliesin preservation, which he says is an ongoing process in a good way.
Preservation of Taliesin has to be done with a teaspoon, not a front loader.
All the work they do is meticulous to make sure the living room, the courtyard, and the studio all look just like they always have.
In addition to carpenters and so on, we have researchers who are full-time looking at sources and correlating drawings and photographs, and that obviously had to happen before anybody pulls a nail out of a board.
Taliesin now overlooks Frank Lloyd Wright's original resting spot, looking much like it did when Wright built it almost 100 years ago, and that's just how Robinson and others intend to keep it.
The landscape, the building, and life are together make a magical story.
Frank Lloyd Wright's grave at the family chapel near Taliesin is empty now. His 3rd wife's dying wish was to have his remains with hers at a memorial near Taliesin West in Arizona. In spite of much opposition, her supporters dug up his body in the middle of the night in 1985 and took them down there. If you'd like to see Taliesin for yourself, you can take a walking tour this weekend. They run Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and this is your last chance for the season. The property then will close until tours start up again in May. For more information, go to taliesinpreservation.org. You can also take a virtual tour thanks to some Madison College students and ZD Studios. They created this animation of Taliesin to scale, shown exactly as it was when Frank Lloyd Wright died back in 1959. This was on display at the Guggenheim Museum's 50th anniversary celebration earlier this year in New York. The 10-minute animation took the group 500 hours to complete. It's incredible. To watch the whole thing, go to zebradogs.com, click on the red Frank Lloyd Wright box in the bottom right corner, and go from there.